today, which hi there. We are today looking at the cost of living crisis and the impact that's having currently on employees in the workplace, and going to talk about some ways that we can support our employees through this period, through looking at reward and recognition schemes, and just looking at something that is, I think, challenging many businesses right now. So great to be joined again today by Andrew. Hello there.
Hey Kelly, good to see you again. Thank you for letting me come back onto the webinar. Appreciate
No
it.
worries. Good to have you. Good to have you. So yeah, I think we're going to kick off by sort of looking at the cost of living crisis and where we're at with that today. What I suppose it'd be interesting before we start to get your view, Andrew, in terms of is it something that this kind of on your agenda, or that you're being challenged with yourself, or you're hearing about a lot?
Yes, it's on the global agenda. I don't think there's any country that doesn't have inflation or cost of living issues that are going on. Especially, we have people all over the world, and one of the biggest issues is, we are in dollars. Our companies in the U.S., we're in dollars.
Mm,
We have people all over the world, and sometimes there are issues with the dollar is fluctuating very quickly, and what my salary based on dollars isn't working for me. I need to peg it to the pound, or I need to peg it to the euro,
mm,
or something else. And that's that's been a huge discussion over the last, I'd say, 12 months, because it is changing. Like
mm,
some of these countries are changing weekly. You're seeing huge fluctuations, and the cost of living locally is going up, but also the cost of what you're getting paid might be more, it might be less,
mm,
depending on
mm.
the week. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, absolutely. So, just before we do kick off, because I think that you're gonna sort of ask me a few questions on the subject. If anybody has any questions for either Andrew or myself, then please do just drop them in the comments, and we will address those as we go through, or we'll definitely give the floor to you guys at the end if there's any additional questions or anything anybody wants us to kind of cover. So please do, as I said, questions or comments in the comment section, and we will get to those throughout.
Perfect. So yeah, these were some questions that we kind of came up with throughout the week. So I mean, one of the key things was, what is the cost of living crisis? And obviously, inflation is on everyone's mind all over the
Mm,
world. But like, what is this crisis, and
mm,
why do employers need to support their employees during this time? Why is this
mm.
important?
Okay, so I think and you touched on it already. I think it's affecting everybody. So the cost of living crisis, I think we've seen a number of things that have driven us and created the situation that we're in now. So we obviously had the pandemic, which was had a major impact on the economy, on people, on goods, supplies, service, etc. We've had Brexit, which has obviously disrupted as well. We've had the war in Ukraine, which is another disruptor. And so, it's a perfect storm, I suppose, in terms of just, a sequence of events has led us to being a situation where the cost of living is, increasing. It's becoming increasingly more expensive to buy food, to heat our homes, to run our cars. And so, everybody is facing a situation now where the cost of goods and services have increased. Our salaries on the whole haven't matched that increase, and therefore we're in a situation where people don't have as much disposable income, or worse, do not have money to be able to meet their bills and and pay for basics like food and water and heating. And I think the reason why we need to care about that as employers and as HR professionals is because people, when they are struggling financially or worried about their financial situation, or can't feed their family, or pay for heating, etc., become increasingly stressed and anxious and worried, and that will impact people. And I don't think we can take the view, a very old-fashioned view now, of, oh, you must leave your personal problems at the door when you come to work, because people just can't do that. So we need to care about this, because it will be directly impacting a lot of our workforce, and that will impact on them in terms of their wellness, their ability to show up to work. There's millions of things that could be happening within our workforce. I think in terms of the stress, the anxiety, they may be working a second job, so exhaustion, and I think we can't, as employers, ignore the impact that this is going to have on our workforce.
No, that covers a lot of ground for us to discuss. What are the specific impacts this is having, like on employees and employers, and on the employer relationship, I suppose too?
Yeah, and I think it's important, isn't it, to acknowledge that that it's impacting both sides of that relationships. Because whilst we've just talked there about how it's impacting individuals, it's also impacting business owners, because most business owners will be running premises, or needing supplies, relying on services to deliver their product, their service, and their costs are going to be going up as well. So they're dealing with having to have an increased cost of running a business, with having a workforce who are struggling as well to and wanting probably more money because of that. So yeah, the impact is on both sides. And I think also people don't naturally tend to like to talk about money or concerns about money and the stresses that's causing. So I think as employers, we can't also just assume that because our employers aren't talking about it, they're not impacted or affected by it. So I think looking at it from both sides of that relationship, there is definitely challenges and impacts on both of those employer sides as well, that will be creating challenges within the workplace.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, we've seen. We've raised our costs for customers, but not close to the cost, to our own costs going up.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're selling software. I can't imagine if we were selling physical goods, food, things that dealt with a much more complex supply chain. We're lucky we deal with Microsoft Azure servers and with our developers, and that's our whole supply chain. So it makes things easier. But I can't imagine the complexities of dealing with some of these other businesses, especially with the situation in Ukraine, like you mentioned, and needing grain or things like that.
Yeah.
One of the things that we had discussed before, but what is a reward and recognitions program?
Okay, so when we talk about and how this relates to the cost of living crisis and the impact it's having, so I think the number one thing that people are looking for right now is ways that they can be supported, in right now, so financially or from a well-being point of view. So when we talk about reward and recognition, we look at that as part of the employee life cycle. So people, we know, in order to feel engaged, need to feel valued for the value and their contribution. And the best way to obviously feel valued is to recognize the value add and reward the value that the employee is given. And it's gone far beyond salary. So as we know, money is a hygiene factor. So money won't motivate, but obviously money is needed, and more than ever money is needed. So we can't not think about the salary point like element of reward and recognition. It's very important that we consider that. But when I talk about reward and recognition, I'm talking about that bigger piece around other benefits. So how much holiday entitlement we're giving, what kind of sick pay, maternity pay, paternity pay, other rewards around discounted gym membership, off of maybe vouchers for discounts off of products, etc. So looking at how are we recognizing and rewarding our people, so recognizing them for the work and the contribution they're making, recognizing them right now for the fact that they could be struggling financially, so what are we doing to support and help them? Because if we have got a good reward and recognition system in place, we are then supporting our people to be well, to be valued, to be motivated, which will have a positive impact on business. So it's a win-win situation. So that full reward and recognition program is kind of everything from salaries, benefits, incentives, and well-being.
How do you tailor that to specific people? Because you're talking about a lot of different levers to pull. I mean, I guess you'd have to know the employee pretty well. So like if you're onboarding a new employee, how do you know which one of these would motivate them? Like, how do you figure that out in the recruiting process?
Okay, so it's quite hard through obviously, well, it's not hard, but in terms of through the recruitment process. So one thing I try and encourage employers to do, if possible, is to have have some flexibility within their reward and recognition programs. So there are great platforms now that you can use where the employee gets to pick, their rewards. So if there is an allowance, say, so that they get so much of an allowance that they can spend on this stuff, then they get to pick, and there's platforms there whether they use it for a gym membership or offer, shopping like groceries, or for high street shopping vouchers. There's also schemes that you can implement which allow you to buy and sell annual leave. So if you need more, if you don't want all your annual leave, and then you can sell some to obviously, and in effect, get the money back for that. So I think it's about having flexibility and variety within your reward and recognition programs. And the best way to kind of ensure that because it's only a benefit if it benefits the people, you're offering benefits that are actually benefits, is by asking your people. So, if you're doing employee surveys, or if you have like focus groups in the organization, sort of find out from people, what is it that you would see as a benefit? What kind of benefits would you like to see within the organization? And then where possible, being able to offer that variety so that people get to some choice in, the benefits that really benefit them. Another great sort of platform or initiative is using employee assistance programs. So they're really cost-effective ways to give more benefits and support to your people. So through an EAP, employees will often have access to support groups or counselling, discounted medical treatment, etc. So things that will really have an impact right now when money's tight. They're great ways to introduce some additional support and benefits to your workforce without having to necessarily just increase salary.
Okay. So how does that link to salary as well? So like, how do you figure out a way to link this in? Because I mean, if an employee is if somebody's looking for a job or somebody's inside of a job, salary is obviously like number one. How do you link these two?
Yeah, exactly. So salary is going to be like really, I mean, it's always important, but I think more than ever right now, because people need money, and so salary is important. So I think there's lots of tools out there that you can use to do some salary benchmarking. I think it's about having a salary structure within the business that is fair and transparent. So being really sort of clear on what roles within your business. So what we do with clients, for instance, is we look at introducing bandings, like salary bandings. So we'll say like there's going to be 6 bandings, for instance, depending on the size of the business. And these are the salaries within each of these bands. So then we'll look at the roles and say, okay, well, this role, due to the skill, experience, like level of technique required to perform that role, fits into this band. And then you sort of put each of your roles into different bands, and then you show obviously the salary levels for each of those bands. So people are really clear that when they take on a role, they understand what the salary is for that role, and they also understand what kind of roles and competencies and skills are needed to be able to progress through those salary bandings. So I think it's really important that people feel they're being well rewarded and paid for the role that they're doing. So I always encourage transparency and structure around your salary bandings, because that does form part of your reward and recognition program. And then looking at that, okay, so then outside of that, what are the ways are we going to reward and recognize our people through benefits, platforms, incentives, etc., bonuses? And then one thing I always encourage employers to do as well is look at then sort of highlighting to people what that total reward looks like. So if you're, in this position within the organization, your salary will be X, your bonus or your benefits will be X, Y, Z, and your total reward equals this. So people understand, because sometimes we take for granted that people just know like what they're entitled to or what they receive or how much that equates to. And quite often that isn't the case. And, we've implemented it at HR Star. So we do total benefits, reward and benefit statements, so people can understand what that full package looks like to them, and what they receive for being an employee at HR Star. Because as I say, I think we do have to take salary into consideration, because it's a really important part of that reward and recognition piece.
Yeah, no, it's I'd say it's always the central piece, and then everything else you can put around it.
Yeah,
it is surprising. There are times that you meet I mean, obviously, this is more common in the U.S. where healthcare and health benefits
Mm,
are so important because it's really make or break in the salary. So I do notice it a lot more in the U.S. than I do in other European countries where it's or Europe or other countries where we offer health insurance. People are kind of like, oh, that's a nice benefit for me. Where in the U.S. it's like that's the second question in the interviews. Like, so what do the health benefits look like for us? Um, so how if you're an employer that doesn't have recognition and rewards program, you could call me one of those employers, let's say. How should we go about implementing a program
mm.
like this?
Okay, so I think you need to think about obviously what sort of investment you want to make in this. So what money have you got available to invest in your program? What do you want your program to achieve? So do you want it to be around rewarding um, achievement through if you're a target based KPI driven organization, and we're going to introduce bonuses based on people achieving those targets and KPIs. Do I want my reward and recognition system to also include my well-being? So do I want to make sure that through reward and recognition I'm giving, say, a well-being allowance or access to platforms that enable people to have their well-being needs addressed as well? So I think a starting point is looking at all your options. So, look at everything that you could implement and then think, right, what are my priorities? And the best way to then, as I've already touched on, to decide is by asking your people. So do a survey or do focus groups or ask your people what benefits do they need and want? Because depending on where they are in their own sort of life cycle, their age, that everyone, like each employee will have a different lens that you need to look at it. So whether it's through new starters coming into the business, entry level, or whether it's more mature people, it's people with families, what do they need? Because some people may value flexibility in working patterns far more than gym membership, but others may not be
Yeah.
fussed about the flexibility, but they'd love a bit of gym membership, so, or discounted vouchers for food or retail, etc. So I think ask your people what they need and want, look at all the options available to you, and then prioritize from there. And then I think what the most then important thing is communicating, whilst you implement that, what you're doing and why and how it works, and ensuring that it's fair and consistent and open to everybody. So but like I'll always come back to communication, and I'll always come back to asking your people, because you could think, oh, I know what I'm going to do, I'm going to give everybody XYZ benefits, and then you roll it out and was like, well, actually, I don't think that is a benefit, or I'm not fussed about that. Whereas, you ask the people, and like I say, if you can then have a bit of variety in your reward and recognition program, so that you can tailor, everyone can kind of have a bit of choice in the benefits that they have, then that will also go really far in having a positive impact.
How do you? I don't know how many companies you work with that have employees like in a lot of different countries, but
Mm.
how do they do this? How do they adjust this based off of geography as well?
Again, yeah. So we're predominantly working with businesses based in the UK. So it's I suppose in that respect it's easier because it's very similar. But no, we do have some clients based in the US. So again, I think it's looking at what's available, obviously within the area. Again, asking the people like what they need and want, and just taking that same approach. It might. I think taking the same approach to like reviewing and researching. I think just then looking at what feedback and results you get from that to really influence and impact what you then do in terms of those reward and recognitions.
Okay, no, that's good to know. And what I mean, what is the as far as like the cost of living crisis and all this stuff is, what what have you seen the companies, how are they dealing with this beyond sort of these programs? Like how are companies able to handle, because I mean obviously we've heard about a lot of layoffs where companies have said, well, our business
Mm.
isn't going up, so we're going to lay people off. But the people that are staying on, I mean, they are dealing with this. What is the typical increase? I mean, are people going with the increase in inflation? Are they sort of how are companies dealing with this?
So it's a conversation I'm having with the majority of our clients at the moment. I think because typically most clients and businesses have a financial year from April. So they're looking at, salary reviews around this time of the year, and they're very aware that they're going to have to do something more than normal because of the expectation, and just because of obviously, the inflation and how much it is costing to live. So we also have the national minimum wage increasing, and it's the most significant increase this year than we've seen in many years, 9 point something percent. So whilst I've not seen any employers yet match inflation, they are going a lot higher. So I think on average we would normally see around 3, 4, 5% salary increase. Like we're seeing like 5% upwards, like 5, 6, 7, 8%. So I think that's coupled with people really looking at numbers, like their staff numbers, in terms of, do we need to slim down the numbers to be able to afford the increase in salaries across the board. So it's a challenging time. It really is.
Do the companies ever tie? I know a couple people that have negotiated recently contracts tied to inflation. One of the PCI inflation numbers. I mean, obviously that happens with rent in most countries. It's tied to PCI, but is that a normal practice? I heard about it from two people recently, and I was frankly surprised. I don't know if it was something locally here, but I was wondering.
No,
if
it's not something I see. So the norm that we see here is that businesses will say that they'll do an annual salary review, but that no salary increase is ever guaranteed, and it's always at the discretion of the company and dependent on company performance. So I haven't seen any of that going on here.
Yeah, I was surprised because I was thinking, well, if you did that across, I mean, obviously these guys were more senior people, but if you did that across the board, you're risking that, you need to be able to increase your prices basically at the same.
And I think, like you said earlier, like a lot of businesses are increasing their prices, but nowhere near in terms of the amount it's increased for the business to be able to provide that service or product. So they're still falling behind, and so then having to obviously as a business look at increasing salaries as well, like it's tough. And I think then like you say, we're seeing layoffs, and I'm not surprised. I think businesses just can't afford to keep like a large number of the workforce on if their costs of running the business are ever increasing.
No, it's something that we have been dealing with because I mean especially in tech, salaries went up quite a bit over the last few years. It didn't keep up with price increase. I mean, if you try and pass a 25% price increase to your customer after like 2 years of not increasing your prices, they'll think you're crazy and they'll start looking for somebody else. So it's definitely it's a difficult challenge. You have this balance where we increased our price 10% this year, and we had to figure out a number that was like, okay, what would be acceptable inside of the inflation story that people would feel comfortable with this, but at the same time would at least get us close to where our costs were getting. We didn't even get close to our costs, but we didn't churn a lot of customers from it, but it was a really delicate balance to go between, and then figuring out how to pass that off to your employees and making sure
and I think employees understand, don't they, at the moment, that it's really tough and that prices are increasing for everybody. And I'm sure there's many employees who would obviously rather be in a role with maybe not a salary increase than not have a job at all. But it's again, like you say, that delicate balance, isn't it, of ensuring that we are acknowledging that our workforce will be facing these challenges that the cost of living crisis, are presenting, and that we need to be acknowledging with them what, as a business, we're doing about that, and to be able to support them through it.
Yeah, and I mean, even on top of it, taxes, things like that. I mean, in a lot of places, I think in the UK, you guys have had a lot of increase in tax as well. And in other countries, it's one of those like hidden things that even if you put someone's salary there, all of a sudden it's still less. We were talking to somebody in Germany the other day that we were negotiating their salary, and we sent over their like the sort of printout of what it would all look like, and he was like, "Wow," he's like, "Something must have happened because I'm getting way more taken out in this
Mm,
than I was before. He had he had relocated a couple years ago, but he said that it seems like it had increased, and I don't know. It's one of those things that eats out of
mm.
the overall budget of a family.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I think if you then can add other, ways to help, through like some of the things we've talked about today in terms of discounts or, other ways to add to that, just will
A lot
really
of these
help.
have tax. A lot of these are like pre-tax too. I mean, I know I was talking to somebody in Portugal a few days ago, and there was a lot of things around vouchers and waivers,
Mhm,
especially around like education,
mhm.
food, that they get pre-tax, and it's advantageous for the company. I don't know if it's the same in the UK or in other
Yeah, we
countries.
do. They're called salary sacrifices. So we do, we can offer some, salary sacrifice benefits, to employees. So yeah, again, it's a help both sides of that relationship, employees employers. And I think there's something else that one of our clients have just started using called wage stream, and it's a software that you can link it to your payroll and your time and attendance rota. So our client who used it actually works in hospitality, and you can get an advance on your salary. So for instance, if you're paid monthly and you've worked 2 weeks in that month already, you can drill down some of that salary before payday of the hours
Hmm.
that you've already worked. So it's money that you've already earned, but you were due to be paid it at the end of the month. But you can, through this wage stream, this software, drill down some of that money sooner. So there's no deficit, and you're only drilling down money that you've already earned. But it just means you get access to
Interesting.
some money before payday, which I thought was actually a really good sort of piece of software and system to introduce, because it might just be, yeah, right now people just need access to cash a bit quicker.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, I've heard
yeah.
of that in the U.S. There's payday loans that you can get paid
Mm,
upfront, especially for people that have lower incomes where it's really
mm,
not enough that they need to get paid upfront. And
mm.
I, I know they do that. I've never heard of WageStream. I'll take a look at that. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously in
no,
Europe, people do like monthly payments in Europe, so it goes longer. Where in the U.S. it's only every 2 weeks. But
right. Yeah. So
that's
we pay,
interesting.
yeah, most do monthly here. So it's just, yeah. So in hospitality, this is like I said, the client who's using it, they work in hospitality, and they're seeing that, especially their I suppose younger workforce who just need access to cash a bit quicker.
Yeah,
They'll do a couple of weeks work and they'll drill down and take some of that money before payday. And it's really, and the employees are just seeing this as such a benefit. They're really chuffed with it. So I think we might see more and more stuff like that being introduced, just to try and help our workforces, and I think because in that system, in circumstance, you're not drilling down on any money that you haven't earned. So you've earned this money. It's not as if you're getting, an advance on your salary. So yeah, I think anything like that we can do to just show that our employees that we understand that it's tough for them right now, and we're doing what we can to help them, will go a really long way.
yeah. No, no, it's that's interesting. I'm gonna
Mm.
look this company up. I hadn't heard of it before.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if we can open it up to see
Yeah.
if anyone else had any questions. I didn't see anything in the comments, but if people have any questions, feel free to ask them now. Write them to us. Kelly can answer them. I can answer them. Whatever you prefer. Now we can just make some small talk, just in case somebody puts the comments in. We discuss something. Keep the airtime running. This is. I was glad you brought this up. I thought it was interesting to discuss
Mm.
something pretty topical. So it was for me.
Yeah, and
It's
as I said earlier, I think
topical.
sometimes people really struggle, don't they, to admit that they're having, a challenging time with these, especially money. Like people, I don't know whether it is actually more of a a British thing, but we don't tend to
No,
like to
nobody
talk
likes to talk
about
about
money.
money.
So I think to have to go into work and sort of say to your colleague or your line manager, do you know what, actually I'm really struggling right now, or this is really tough, it's hard to do that. And so and I think as in line managers or HR professionals, it's important to understand how we can have these conversations with our people. So how we broach those conversations, or if somebody comes to us and asks, how do we deal with those types of conversations? Because it's probably a different type of conversation we've had to have before with our workforce. So
Yeah,
we can then be proactive and saying, hey, we know right now things are tough, so these are the ways that we're going to help you, that will take a massive amount of, you know, of that anxiety around having those conversations away from people, and just be like, okay, great, like, you know, I don't have to go and ask, this stuff is just there and I can access it.
Yeah, especially, I mean, right now there's so many external forces that are forcing this. I mean, one thing is if you've had a baby, or I'm getting married, or I have like this life event, or I'm sick or something like that, then you feel like you can approach it because you have a reason. And now it's just like I went to the grocery store and it was $300 for this instead of 150, and I don't really know.
And it's food, isn't it? It is food. That I was watching the news recently, like this week, I think, and where they said that the thing that, you know, the prices that are increasing the most are on food. So just like the average weekly shop has just gone up ridiculous amounts. I mean, I have a family of 5 or 3 children, me and my husband, and I've noticed just, you know, what we would normally spend on a weekly shop is now suddenly, you know, a ridiculous amount of money. Or we're spending less, and I'm thinking like we've got no bloody food in the house. So it's like it's just, and I've got 3 boys, like 2 teenagers, and as a young one, so like literally they eat me out of house and home. So I'm just like, oh my god.
I can't imagine. I have 2 little kids. Mine are 5 and 7, and frankly, I don't know. A lot of times because they're growing so fast at this age that I can't tell if it's inflation or they just eat more. A lot of times, like a lot of times, I go to the grocery store. I'm like, this is like triple what I used to spend. Like, I don't know if it's just their fault that they're getting.
Oh, I know. Yeah, tell me about it. My eldest son. Yeah, he's nearly 15 and he's constantly hungry. And I just feel like I'll fill the fridge and then I literally go a day later and I'm like, where's all the food? And like, how do I keep you guys like fed and not hungry? And like, yeah, the cost of it as well. I'm like, oh yeah, crazy
teenagers. I can't imagine having eventually I'll have 2, but I can't imagine having teenagers, especially right now. That would be a very difficult time for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel for you.
Thanks.
All right, Kelly. Well, I appreciate all the time. I see we don't have any comments, but I appreciate all the time, and this was an interesting discussion. So thank you very much.
Thanks ever so much. Yeah, see you next time. So thank you, Andrew, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope you found it insightful. If you want to reach out to myself or Andrew, then please do. But yes, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Kelly. Bye.
Bye-bye.